We appreciate everyone coming out tonight. My name is Ken Hildebrand. I'm the city engineer in Tucker. We're here tonight to kind of kick off our transportation master plan. This is an exciting time for Tucker, newly incorporated. We've got a lot of things going. We've got, as many of you know, the SPLOST passed last November. The city is scheduled to get over $30 million over the 6 years. Of course, some of that's going to paving our roads that have been neglected, but a lot of it's going to go to sidewalk and transportation improvements. Council has budgeted some money, but really the first thing you need to do before you just start going out and constructing things is to have a path forward, to know where we're headed. So council said, well, what we need is a plan. We've got to have a transportation master plan to give us direction, to know what the desire of the community is, what our priorities are, and so we can establish funding. And really before you seek federal funding, which we plan to do, aggressively pursue through Georgia DOT and the Atlanta Regional Commission, you've got to have a plan in place. So that's why we're here. We've contracted with VHB. We're excited to be working in partnership with them, and one of the main points the council made when they awarded that contract is we've got to have community input. That's very important. So that's why we're here. We have a stakeholder committee that we've established. We've had a meeting with them, and we have, I believe, 2 open houses scheduled. When's the next one?
November. It'll be on one of the slides.
Okay, good. So we've got another open house in November, and then the plan would be first of next year that we'll adopt the plan and move forward from there. So anyway, I want to introduce Tim Priest with VHB. He is the project manager from the consultant side of it, and he'll have a PowerPoint, and then I think we'll probably take questions, and then we'll probably at the conclusion of that we'll go back out in the atrium there and hang around for as long as you like. So, thank you, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Good evening. I'm Tim, and good to be here. So, who drove here this evening? 2 people. Who walked here this evening? I walked from the restaurant, if that counts. Anybody bike here this evening? All right, so we all got here some way. All right, good. So we're all interested in transportation. Just wanted to make sure. So as Ken said, I'm with a company called VHB, and we're working with 2 other firms that are going to help you put together the city's first transportation plan. So I'm not going to talk real long because we want to hear from you this evening, but I do want to present briefly what is the transportation plan and what's the schedule and what's our work plan, who are we going to talk to, and what kind of work are we going to do. The first thing I want to say is just to put this in context. So as you know, Tucker is relatively new, and you've just completed your first comprehensive plan, Tucker Tomorrow. And that sort of sets the overall tone or direction for a lot of things in the city, including transportation. So our mission is to take that direction and continue to work with you all and get very specific in terms of priorities and project lists. Specific even to the point of helping the city figure out what's the best use of that $30 million for repaving and intersections and sidewalks and those things. The city has several other efforts also underway, and so part of our charge is to make sure these things are running not only in parallel but coordinated. So we're here to talk about the transportation plan. There's also a trail master plan underway. They've actually got started pretty quickly, and they're probably ahead of us in terms of the overall schedule. So we're meeting with them. They've met with their stakeholder group twice already, and I've been there both times. So pretty much every time they meet, I'll be there, and every time we meet, they'll be here, and then we'll be sharing information behind the scenes as well. The key point to note about the trail master plan versus this transportation plan, the trail master plan is going to focus on joint use paths that are primarily off the streets. And that's That's sort of their primary purpose. We're going to sort of backfill around that by looking at sidewalks and also looking at potentially some other streets that might be good candidates for some sort of on-street treatment for bicycles, whether it's a 4-foot bike lane or whatever that looks like. So as you can imagine, in the end of the day, we're going to end up with not 2 separate plans, but 2 separate networks that are going to go on the same map. It's going to involve both on-road and off-road facilities for walking and for biking. There's also a Parks and Recreation Master Plan going on. We will primarily be looking at how to get to the park, not necessarily what goes on in the park, so they will be working on that. Sign ordinance overlay district going on, historic resource report going on, so there's a lot going on. The one that most relates to what we're doing is the trail plan, and we will be working with them closely. As Ken alluded to, there's also work already underway out of Tucker tomorrow in terms of the city's construction work program. So everything that's going on right now was identified in Tucker tomorrow and is pretty much already underway. So if it sounds like there's a lot of work going on, there is. Probably not going to go through each of them in detail. One of the main themes that I know you all brought up in the Tucker Tomorrow plan was connections, and these things be connected. Primarily transportation connections to parks and to downtown. So I think we've taken that to heart, and that's kind of where we're starting with our direction, and then we want to hear from you on more specifics about what that means. The transportation master plan itself is going to address streets, trails, sidewalks, transit, and parking. So that's really everything except freight railroad and airplanes and ports. We don't have any ports in Tucker. Part of the outcome of this effort will be a phased improvement plan. So we will have a specific list and a map of policies and projects for short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Also, please be aware that this is the city's first transportation plan, which makes it extra exciting, I guess, for me to be able to work with you on, but it won't be their last. Most communities will revisit their transportation plan every 5 to 7 years, just depending on how rapidly things are changing. So we will probably spend a lot of our focus on the first 5 years, the short-term work program. There will be a midterm and long-term, but we'll probably focus mostly on the short-term, because those will be the things that the collective we will decide on and the mayor and council will act on for staff to go implement immediately. The final document from the transportation plan will be maps and a report. And that report will function as the transportation element of the Tucker Tomorrow plan. So you've got the Tucker Tomorrow plan. This will be sort of an addendum to that, specific for your transportation projects and priorities. So who's involved? Obviously the city officials and staff, the consultant team, and that is VHB. And I have partners here with Gresham Smith and Partners. Raise your hand. They're scattered about. Amber is also with VHB, Amber Johnson in the back. And the collaborative firm is also helping us with outreach. So you'll be seeing us repeatedly. The other entity that's involved is you, the citizens. Very important. This will be your plan. I like Tucker, but I don't live in Tucker. So you have vested interest in this plan, obviously, and so you're an important part of this plan. And as Ken mentioned, we also have a stakeholder working group, and that group was assembled by city leadership, and they're seeing the same, they will see all the same information that you'll see. There's no secret information, but we get together with them around the table, and we have more time to discuss more in an informal setting. But what's the schedule? We started just a few months ago, in about May of this year. We've been busy collecting existing data and building maps. We've been out inventorying the system, the streets, the signals, the sidewalks, assembling all that information. That's kind of, you see where we are today on this red line. So we're just about done collecting existing information. We're beginning to understand existing issues and needs, and we'd like to hear more about that from you this evening. And over the next 3 months, we'll be doing some analysis back in our office, running some computer models, testing some intersections, We'll be looking at how can we improve, this intersection or that intersection. We'll come up with some preliminary recommendations. We'll be back out and we'll share those with you all and get some feedback on those. They will be preliminary. They will not be final. And I have a thick skin. I hope you'll like some things that we test and come up with, and it's okay if you don't like all of them. It'll be a collaborative process. Then we will then work on refining those recommendations and tweaking the plan through January and December. We'll have a draft plan together back to the city in February, and then you'll see that again. While that's going on, we will be meeting regularly with our stakeholder working group. We've begun stakeholder interviews. It's a fancy way of saying we want to speak to certain key members in the community, people that own businesses, people that are maybe the president of their HOA. So there's a lot of civic groups and organizations in the city. We want to make sure we can hear from them. 3 public meetings. There's the date, Ken. So we're here at the first one. The next one will be November 15th. I think it's already on the city's calendar, and then January 17th. We've created an area on the city's website to start sharing information. That page is already there. We will be adding everything you see tonight. We will be adding up to that page, hopefully for the end of the day tomorrow. And then as we proceed and as we have any preliminary findings or potential recommendations, we'll be sharing that through the city's website as well. And then later in the plan, probably not until the first of the year, we will also go around and meet with all of our neighboring jurisdictions. And we'll be looking at their plan, looking at the plan that we're beginning to put together, and make sure those things match. So I wanted to give you a little flavor of some of the information that we've been collecting and organizing these first few weeks. So we have information now on the traffic volumes on all the city streets. We've inventoried street ownership, as well as how many lanes, what's the posted speed limit, where are the traffic signals, where are the stop signs. Some of this data was available, some of that we've built from the ground up. We're putting it all in mapping as we go along so we can leave it with the city. So the city is building their mapping inventory, and hopefully we will be helping them in that regard. We located all of the crosswalks, and the city had collected recently through an electronic means inventory of all the sidewalks, and you may have seen these maps out in the lobby already. So we now have a very complete inventory of all the sidewalks in the city as to where they are or where they are not. We've done some inventory of the condition of sidewalks, but it's not, we don't have a block by block detailed inventory of every sidewalk in terms of its condition. We know if there's a sidewalk there, we just don't know all the conditions yet. And I mentioned traffic signals and all-way stop signs. So that's kind of what we know. These are the maps that we've been assembling. They're out in the lobby. I just wanted to show you those very briefly. So we're beginning to understand the traffic patterns in the city. If you live here, you understand the traffic patterns better than I did 4 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago. I'm learning. We're beginning to understand that. We understand now how the roads are classified and what number of lanes and how they're used. We found the city has a lot of traffic signals. They're on these maps with these small dark colored round dots. That's a lot of traffic signals for a city this size. So something we want to be aware of. In the transportation master plan, I mentioned the short-term, mid-term, and long-term projects that we'll be looking at. Well, part of looking at that will also be trying to assess and include an appropriate city budget for maintenance. So as you know, the city will have to maintain, facilities over time, and the traffic signals, so far the city doesn't maintain them, but they might take over that maintenance at some point. So we internally want to be aware of that, because that will be a cost item to the city over the long term. We located all the crosswalks that are at intersections, and then we also noted there are quite a few places to cross the street that have an official crosswalk in a mid-block location. So we mapped those as well. Many of them, as you know or would expect, are at schools. It's a picture of what some of the sidewalk inventory looks like. Even on these small maps, you can probably see orange lines where we have sidewalk and spaces or gaps where we're missing sidewalks. So now that we've collected that, I would ask you all to give some thought to as we have begun thinking about how do we go about filling in those gaps and on what priorities. If we had an unlimited budget and a magic wand, it'd be very simple to fill in all the gaps overnight. But I don't think that's going to happen. It will take time, and we'll fill in the gaps as our budget will allow. But that's going to raise questions that we have to think about. Where do you start filling in the gaps? Do you start near the schools first? Do you start downtown first and then work out from there? Do you start on the major roads first and do the minor roads second? So there's a lot of options to think about there. Somebody's going to say, just start anywhere, right?
Yeah.
That'd be okay too.
Just start.
Yeah, but that's why we brought some of this mapping. I wanted to throw out those types of questions and ask you all to be pondering those as we've begun looking at that as well. This map shows existing bike facilities and multi-use trails, and I'm not sure if you can see it in great detail from your seats, but there's not a lot there yet. so we've got some work to do, but as you all know, we've got the Stone Mountain Trail just to our south, not very far away. And we've got some really great destinations that we know people want to be able to walk and bike to downtown, to Stone Mountain Park, and to the Stone Mountain Trail, to name three right off the top of my head. And there are others. We've mapped and understand the existing MARTA bus routes in the area. We also understand there's one Gwinnett bus route just barely outside the city limits. It misses the city limits by 100 yards. But we understand where the existing transit services are. We've got some information about those bus routes. How many people use them, what hours of the day do they run, that sort of thing. So that's some of the data that we have real quick. We're studying that data right now. We're trying to understand where congestion is, what's the pattern of congestion, what day of week, what direction, what time of day. We've collected some intersection counts at I think 5 sort of critical intersections where we know there's congestion, and we've begun testing those in some computer models. So that's some of the information that we've begun looking at. We're learning, we're beginning to understand the existing conditions in the city, but we would really like to hear more from you